7 with Steve, Cat, Ryan, Amanda, and Eric. In the voice of NEW, Vince Perry. Hitting all the topics like a clothesline flurry. Turn up your speakers and hear them out. You can listen from your car, even on your couch. They too raw, who NXT? Handing out smackdowns, follow on IG. Plus, it's sponsored by Tag Me a Date. Go to YouTube and sub now for every update. It's all wrestling here. No safe space. Now listen in. Time to hear from some of the greats.
I had to find the version with Shivani doing the Sting. Fucking A, man. Sting is back. He's back on TNT. He's in AEW, and it's a multi-year deal. And it's not off the table that he's going to put on the boots and get a little physical. But before I get into it, the floor is yours, Vincent.
Of course. Welcome to the War Report podcast brought to you by TagMeADate.com, the first and only dating site exclusively for fans of professional wrestling. We took a week off due to an illness. Everybody's better now, so we're back. In the last 2 weeks, a lot of stuff happened, so not the smallest of which is Sting returning.
Well,
just to, like you said, it's not WWE, it's AEW, it's multi-year. He's on TNT. They built him up like a legend, like WWE really didn't. Like they did initially. When Sting debuted in WWE, they did everything they could to make him look like a star. And
now hold on. Let's just get one thing straight. WWE didn't have to do a fucking thing to make Sting look or feel like a star, because at the end of the day, Sting not only is a star, Sting became a star without Vince McMahon.
And that's why they treated him so badly the entire time.
And it's a damn shame, because the things that they could have done that they just didn't allow. I mean, and now it's coming out that Sting did pitch a cinematic match with The Undertaker to Vince McMahon, and he said no.
What everybody was thinking. And I know, okay, you had AJ Styles.
Anybody hear the background noise, by the way? Or is it just me? I'm hearing an echo or something.
Yeah, I hear that. I don't know what it is.
I don't know. I'll turn down my headphones so we're not bleeding over.
But man, I what a shame. I mean, that could have been, and especially if you did it a cinematic type of way, because there's so much editing and so much you could have done and just spaced it out and took your time. I think I'm not a big fan of the cinematic matches. And if you're a fan of the show, you know this. Right. But at the same time, I was a fan of the Boneyard match. And if they did something the way it was shot and the way it felt with a Boneyard type match, I think it would have been, I really think they could have done something special. I mean, it is what it is, and that ship obviously has sailed because Undertaker officially is retired. Take that for what it is. And Sting is now multi-year deal back on TNT. Talk about coming full circle, right?
Yeah, it definitely, for having Sting back on TNT, this show, AEW, for all intents and purposes, is a spiritual successor to WCW. It always was intended that way. It feels a lot like as somebody who watched a lot of WCW, the show feels like Nitro.
Yes.
So it's appropriate. I mean, you've got Tony Schiavone, you've got Sting. And people say, "Oh, well, Sting, he's 61. Goldberg's only 50 something. You don't want to see Goldberg." Yes, I need to. Wrestling fans apparently don't have the ability to use context when comparing things. Apparently when you compare every wrestler, they're all on equal footing, which is why Heath Slater has main evented WrestleMania just as many times as The Rock. It's not fair. When you say nobody wants to see 51-year-old Bill Goldberg wrestle, but you want to see 61-year-old Sting wrestle, why? There's a difference. Nobody wants to see Goldberg wrestle because he was never a good wrestler, ever. Again,
but no,
but
you have to,
because Sting was always a good worker. He was always people liked his promos. He had the fucking crow thing. Before that, he was a surfer. People loved Sting.
Sting was always considered the Hulk Hogan of WCW.
Yep.
Like that's the comparison that they would get. Now, obviously, then Hogan transitioned over to WCW, but that just made it even better too because those two were always against each other throughout the whole thing. And it was fantastic. I mean, it was, and I go back. I want to go back a little. You were talking about, how AEW has always felt very WCW-esque to you, and if you think about it, and correct me if I'm wrong, because Eric, especially, you're better with the timelines. But I would imagine when Cody was at a young age, but he was at an impressionable age, let's say 4 or 5 o'clock where you start to get it, right? Mm-hmm. At that time, I believe Dusty was still in WCW.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yep. So he was around that way of shooting and presentation, and he grew up with that, and then eventually he came to WWE and learned the WWE way, but he never forgot the WCW way. And WCW always had something. They were competition for a reason.
Right.
It's just poor management in the end. And then, of course, letting the guys, the worst thing you can ever do is let your wrestlers run the locker room. Definitely. And make all the decisions.
And that's the funny thing. A lot of now that it's been almost exactly 20 years since WCW went off the air, which is just amazing to me that it's been 20 years.
It makes you feel real fucking old.
Yeah, but people who are now making this argument about WCW never watched it. They weren't there live. They only get the only content. And here's the problem: the only context you get in the mainstream about WCW is from WWE, and WWE always likes to spin it that it was always a mismanaged company that lost money, this, that, and the other thing. When the reality was, it was a very successful. Not to get all deep into it, David Crockett, Jim Crockett Promotions was a very successful local or regional promotion, rather. When David Crockett took over, David made some if I'm remembering my timeline correctly, David made some spending mistakes that meant that he was losing money and sold to Ted Turner. Ted Turner took it and put it on TBS, put it on TNT, turned it from just Jim Crockett Promotions of the NWA to World Championship Wrestling, and it had success, but not a great amount of success.
Not until he handed it to Eric Bischoff.
Right. And even then, it was partly Eric's fault, but it was not entirely Eric's fault. Eric had to offer these sweetheart contracts and big money, Turner money to these guys to get them over to be competition. And he let them take control. And you bring in guys like Russo and Ferrara. And then it's like, oh, well, those guys are gone, so we're going to have Terry Taylor. Who the fuck is Terry Taylor to be booking a national? Why is Terry Taylor booking WCW in like 1999? And they brought back Kevin Sullivan, who hadn't booked anything in 10 years or 15. Like, what the fuck are they doing? So it was definitely mismanagement. But the good parts about WCW, the storylines for me, there's a different feel between a WWF or a WWE storyline and WCW ones, and by extension AEW ones. WWE, WWF storylines always seem very grand. It's the grandest stage of them all. They're meeting at WrestleMania. There's 80,000 people. There's pyro. There's this, that, and the other thing. WCW, while they still had pyro and big venues, WCW was always seemed like smaller stories. It was Tennessee Lee was in love with Sherry, but he was really seeing Medusa on the side.
Oh, I remember that.
But it's little things.
Right.
Guess what? That changed the dynamic, Tennessee Lee was managing the Harlem Heat. That storyline broke them away from Tennessee Lee and into Sherry, and then eventually onto their own to be Harlem Heat, and then Harlem Heat begat Booker T, who became a big deal in WWE. It's all these little things. Like even like the biggest story was WCW versus the NWO, and that was about the company. You know what I mean? It was about things.
The NWO was the greatest storyline ever because it was just done. You couldn't have done it better.
And you can't do it. The thing is, you couldn't even do it in any other era. It wouldn't work. Because in the territory days, superstar Billy Graham would go over, whoever. Dusty Rhodes, when he was done working in Georgia, he'd go work Florida for a little while. Then you could see superstars. So when they jumped ship, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't until Vince started locking down guys that couldn't compete anywhere else because of television deals that this became even possible. And you can't do it now because, honestly, there's no who would you get? You'd have to get Roman Reigns, John Cena, CM Punk, or Brock Lesnar, or The Rock to jump over. There's no big name that could jump over and be like, we're invading AEW or we're invading WWE for that matter, and still do that. This was a once in a lifetime thing, that NWO story. And we're still talking about it to this day.
Right. So that tells you what kind of impact. You know what I mean? It's just incredible.
And this all comes from talking about Sting. Look at all the history. Sting takes the 1980s wrestling and the 1990s Monday Night Wars wrestling and brings it, or at least the context of it, to AEW. There's a lot of history behind Sting coming in, behind Ross and Shivani and Jake the Snake and Jerry Lynn and Dean Malenko and Chris Jericho and all these guys.
Arn Anderson.
Oh, it's so amazing.
And they're using them right, because here's the thing. People always, and again, this was another comparison that I see online a lot because wrestling fans are apparently really dumb. They go, when WWE uses legends, you complain. And when AEW uses legends, people think it's the greatest thing ever. Well, they use them differently. That's why you react to them differently, because they're used
right.
differently.
Correct.
The legends in WWE are fucking invincible. Do you remember when a legend comes in, he's like when Jake the Snake DDT'd Dean Ambrose? He was fucking invincible. He's a 70-year-old guy going out there and beating up the 3 main event stars of the WWE. When these guys are used in the proper context and they're treated with respect, but they're also treated as if they're their actual age, it works. Taz doesn't wrestle. He hasn't wrestled in fucking 20 years almost now, which makes me feel old again. But
he did throw on a Taz mission, though.
Okay, was I the
which
only
was
one?
Great.
I can't be the only one. He threw it on, and the first thing I did was go, the Kata Hajime! I was so excited, but that's what it is. That's the fun of it. Like, I'm having so much fun watching this fucking program.
It really, they do everything right. I mean, they have some issues, don't get me wrong.
Of course. I mean,
and there's some characters that, whatever, but ultimately it's a great product.
What do you think of this Dark Order? What do you think of that, with the Hangman Page and all that stuff?
You know what? It's interesting, and it's making me give a shit because the Dark Order to me was kind of botched like Retribution. The only difference is that AEW's figured out a way to potentially save it where, WWE just keeps fucking that up. Before we get too much further in, there is something that we should address. On a sad note, over the last few days since we had our show last, we did lose the great Pat Patterson and Zeus. For those wrestling fans that remember No Holds Barred, which to this day I still think was Hulk Hogan's best movie ever. We got Tiny Lester, and he went by the name of Zeus. He was, talk about storytelling. It was great to see them do that.
They took it
from the movie and brought it onto.
It was a fictional. This would be like bringing. I was going to say bringing RoboCop in, but they did that in WCW. But this is right. They took a character who was new. This had never been. He was written for the movie. They filmed the movie, and then they made him a character. One of my cats almost took down a curtain over here. and they made him a real life wrestling character. And not just that, he worked matches. He worked like cage matches. Whatever.
Not only did he work matches, dude, but they put him with Macho Man Randy Savage and Sherry.
And
I mean,
he's in the ring. Imagine this guy. He's not a wrestler. He's just kind of a bit part actor. Like he got bigger roles after that. Like he was Debo in the Friday movies. He had a great part in The Dark Knight. He was the prisoner on the prison ship in the middle of the lake in
that's
Dark
right.
Knight. He was all over the place. He was in Fifth Element. So anyway, he had
and even the ring gear was great. Like, look at the picture on the screen. That ring, it was perfect, and it was straight out of the movie. So it was
working with Hogan and Savage and Sherry
and DiBiase.
But could you, man, if you were a wrestler back then, like if you were like Greg Valentine, were you mad? Were you mad this actor came in and is getting main event?
Oh, 100% you were mad. But you know what? Who gives a shit? Like,
No,
the movie made big money in the box office, and now you brought this character from the movie and brought it into the wrestling show. It couldn't have been planned any better. And back then, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, you just didn't see shit like that. Yeah, you had Hogan in the Rocky movie, and you had Mr. T. So, I mean, there was a little bit, but for the most part, you didn't have that kind of shit.
And after it was in theaters, they did a pay-per-view where you ordered No Holds Barred, the movie, the match. So you
That's
read
right.
the movie, and then they showed, I think it was the cage match between Hogan and Zeus, or Savage and Zeus against Hogan, whatever the fuck it was. I don't even know if Hogan had a partner.
Hogan and Beefcake.
I was going to say Beefcake because that's an easy guess. Wherever Hogan was, Beefcake was soon to follow.
That's a true story.
So yeah, they had and even in that, they had the guy, Brell, the bad guy, Mean Gene, was doing an interview with the guy, and he's an actor, and he was in character as Brell talking about Zeus, and he's like, we have to stop this movie from happening. Zeus wasn't supposed to lose. It wasn't in the script. It wasn't agreed upon, this, that, and the other thing. And he's like, it's like really blurring the lines between the movie and reality. And like, he said that Zeus wasn't supposed to lose, but it's a movie. Like it was, but he insisted the script said that Zeus wasn't going to lose, and they changed it because of Hogan. So who like, it's such a weird time, but Zeus. So yes, Tom, Tiny Lister Jr., No Holds Barred, Friday, Dark Knight, Fifth Element, fucking everything.
And Pat Patterson. Yeah, I mean, that's
boy.
Yeah,
I mean, do we owe a lot to Pat Patterson? He created the Royal Rumble.
Yep.
He booked the whole Hogan Warrior match, among other amazing things he's done.
And it just in general was, aside from being Vince McMahon's one of his best friends, which is just an odd thing because you don't really think of Vince as having friends in that sense. Just a mind for the business. He, I mean, there was a point where it was Vince, Bruce Pritchard, and Pat Patterson sitting around Vince's pool in Connecticut booking the WWF.
Right.
And Pat stayed with them for a while. I mean, he did have the ring boy controversy, but I guess that got cleared up and he was back, and he had a very long career with the WWF, WWE. Even when he was retired or not active as much anymore, they were bringing him into NXT, to the Performance Center, to give the kids advice. He was helping as an agent for NXT matches. I saw a story that in between tapings, they put on a match between Pat Patterson and Sergeant Slaughter from like the 70s or the 80s, and they had the NXT trainees watch it, and they were all cheering as if they were there. And like,
that's a classic match.
Yeah, and Pat Patterson was there because he was helping the kids work out, and they're like, we're gonna put this match on, and like, it was a big moment for him. It was a moment for the kids to kind of watch. Hey, you know this guy? This is what he could fucking do. You know, Pat was a mind for the business, and it's a big loss because there are very few people. Paul Heyman's one of them. Patterson's one of them. Vince either is or was, depending on how he's doing now, is one of them. There are very few minds in wrestling who have the ability to put all this stuff together. It exists in a universe that they create, but the moving parts, when it worked, this is why WWE isn't working right now, but when it worked properly, it's because all the moving parts work together. It's not just The Rock is feuding with Austin. The Rock is feuding with Austin, but Austin has beef with Vince McMahon and Sergeant Slaughter, and fucking Big Boss Man, and he's got beef with the Undertaker. But sometimes the Undertaker's going to fight Kane, so the Undertaker and Kane are fighting. But then sometimes Austin's going to come in to fight the. It all moved together, and that part of that is Pat Patterson having the mind to put together segments, matches, feuds, to look at the long term of something and really create art and create wrestling, not just sports entertainment or viral clicks or whatever. He was creating wrestling, and it's a really big loss.
Also, the first Intercontinental Champion.
Yes, he won that tournament in Rio de Janeiro that they never found the footage for. I love that, and he had the shirt when he came out as one of the Stooges. He wore the Rio de Janeiro 1967 or whatever it was T-shirt out there. Oh, beautiful.
He'd come out and they used to come out to Hogan's theme, the Real American.
Yeah, as a ball bust. Oh, for sure.
The
day after he passed, it was a day or two after he passed. It was Wednesday. It was Moxley Omega, and in Moxley's promo at the end, he says, "And all we got to do is go out there and make them go banana."
Yep.
And I didn't remember until I saw something talking about it. That was directly in reference to Pat Patterson, because he was French Canadian. His pronunciation of English wasn't that great. So when and this is something I've heard for years, when he was talking about a big spot, you get the heat to the blah, 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 the 5 minutes, blah, 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 and then you make the big comeback and they all go banana. Like, that's just something that he would say. So it was nice to see that get referenced on TV. Definitely a big loss. Pat Patterson's, if Vince McMahon is the heart behind the WWF, then Pat Patterson was the brain, or the other way around. I don't know which way to put it, but Pat Patterson, there wouldn't be a WWE today without Pat Patterson.
That's very true. So listen, I want to shift gear for a minute. We're talking about mental capacity and the where-ats with Vince McMahon as of late, right? We're always kind of questioning, is he all there? He's just very set in his ways and how he wants things and how he looks at things. But
he also has too many yes men.
I gotta tell you though, I'm fucking beside myself right now.
I just saw the lower third.
That now Keith Lee, among some others, are being sent back to NXT, which
Otis,
I don't really understand how that's going, because he also just lost a fucking handicap match on Raw, which was a great match, by the way, but I wasn't expecting the loss. So he's done absolutely.
What to do with him? I don't understand it. If I had a guy.
So it's his fault, and you're sending him back to NXT? I don't understand. The ring work isn't there. Even Tommy Dreamer, I read something where he was saying he agrees with the decision. What am I not seeing?
Isn't the problem. Hold on. Can I tell you something?
Please, because I'm fired up.
You've watched him wrestle live, right, Steve?
Yes, and he's amazing.
Live. Did you watch the match Takeover Portland, Dijak against Keith Lee?
It was the match of the card.
Keith Lee needs to go back to train after doing all that. No. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
We're going to go ahead, Eric. Please.
But I was just going to say, but we're not going to send Nia Jax back.
What in the fuck? Yes. Oh, there's so many problems right now.
But that's baffling to me. Keith Lee is better than half the roster.
Yes. Well, but here's the thing. And again, this is why AEW reminds me of WCW. When I watched WCW back in the day, the guys from Mexico all wrestled Lucha Libre style. When the guys from Canada came in, like Lance Storm and Bret Hart, they'd all wrestle this very technical Canadian stampede wrestling style. When the guys from Texas came in, they'd work the world-class style. When guys came in from Georgia, they'd work the Jim Crockett style. When they
guys
came
from
in
Japan
Florida,
had the hard style.
Right. Everybody, there's all these different. So you would have guys like Dean Malenko would wrestle Psychosis. And you would think that match wouldn't be good because they wrestled two different styles. But they were both so fucking good at what they did, they made that work. What WWE is doing now is they're saying, whatever style you're working beforehand, whether you come from England and you do catch wrestling, or you come from Brazil and you do jiu-jitsu or whatever the fuck it is, you have to learn the WWE style of wrestling, and that's all we're going to put out there.
But dude, it's bullshit, because at the end of the day, Keith Lee has been wrestling the WWE style since he came into the fucking company and went to NXT. I mean, listen, his NXT run was short, you know, but at the same time, this guy, he's no fucking, you know, like entryway, like Performance Center was the first time he laced up his fucking boots. Go back and watch his 24 and watch his life story. The guy's been doing this for a long fucking time. And then I'm also hearing, well, he's also got some heat because of his weight. Listen, part of the attraction of Keith Lee is the fact that he can do the shit he can do being the size that he is. Yes. I don't want to see him lose weight. If anything, put on a few more and still do that shit, and I would be impressed. The guy is gold. If you book him the right way, but to me, putting him back in NXT is not the answer.
Well, no, but they would put it not. It's not NXT. They're literally sending these guys.
I think it's just Performance Center training, right?
They're sending them back to the NXT Performance, the WWE Performance Center to train like they're trainees. This is Otis, Keith Lee, the big guy with AJ Styles.
Like that guy, I could understand.
Well, yes, because I don't know if I've never even seen him wrestle. But
I mean, listen, I'm okay with that if that's what it is. But at the same time, you know, then you can't be having Keith Lee fucking losing to Miz and Morrison, you know, after dominating them the entire match.
Well,
like,
that's the problem. They're going to go, why isn't Keith Lee over? I don't know, because you just had him lose to these guys who've been on the roster since like 2007.
But he's over anyway.
But this is a diminishing returns thing. We keep saying, but do you notice every week we say, but he's still over, but they keep beating him. If you want the guy to be over, don't fucking beat him every week.
It's amazing.
Every week they do this to him.
It's also baffling because Keith Lee like ticks all the boxes, you know?
Especially in 2020. Not to get too weird, but like Vince McMahon has traditionally always booked white heavyweight champions, and with the exception of like The Rock and Booker T and Kofi. That's it. I think that's all. That's it in the WWF, from what I can remember. So traditionally, white main eventers. In 2020, you can't just say, like, obviously they have such, in the last few years, they've gone out in the last 7 or 8 years to get more women and make a focus on women's wrestling. They've hired more people internationally and of more diverse backgrounds racially within the United States and internationally as well. They have a great mix of a diverse talent on the staff. When you look at everybody that's there, aside from Drew McIntyre, who's another monster, who else stands out? Keith Lee. He can talk, he can sing, he can rap, he's good looking, he's got a nice voice, like a deep baritone that people like listening to. He's friendly looking. When he smiles, people smile. He can wrestle his ass off. He's athletic. And not to be weird, he's an African-American, he's a person of color that you can put up there like the New Day, like Kofi and Big E, and go, listen, if you are a young black kid and you want a superstar to look up to, this is your fucking guy. Absolutely. He came from nothing and built his way all the way up to the WWE. You put that belt on him and he's a fucking legend.
That's the thing too. Like, I really encourage anybody. I am just an absolute huge fan of Keith Lee. I always have been. And even more so, you have to go to the network and you have to watch the 24 that they did on Keith Lee, because it was one of the best that they've done. And it's not that they shot it any differently or they told any different story than a lot of the others. It's just Keith Lee's journey. Yeah. And it was just absolutely fantastic. And it makes you want him to succeed that much more.
Oh, for sure. And the other thing is, speaking of those 24s, apparently internally, WWE itself was like, there was some heat in the locker room about was it Liv Morgan's 24? Because it came out and basically exposed WWE for that. We don't have anything for you. And it was just like, that was the story of Liv Morgan's WWE career. They keep setting things up and pulling the rug out from under her.
I watched it. I didn't think it was I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty cool story.
They like her and they like Liv, but what they're saying is, like, when they look at it, they go, man, she kind of gets, you know, they're setting her up and knocking her down. They're setting her up just to knock her down. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like.
But I didn't get that impression when I watched it. I don't know. I didn't get that impression.
Look at her career, though. Look,
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, there were a lot of unfortunate things that happened along the way, like Ruby Riott getting hurt, and then, listen, again, at the end of the day, I don't think it was anything malicious done to her. I think it was just the same old story like everything else. They just couldn't figure out what to do with her.
Oh yeah, they can't. But that's the problem. It's not that they're singling Liv out, and it's just kind of an indictment of the general process. When you've got, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. If you're on any other TV show, and I know it's not wrestling, but like if you compared it to like The Real World or The Challenge or The Chase, like whatever the fuck those game shows are, those kind of reality shows, you put a girl like Liv in front of the casting agents for any of those shows, they go, yeah, we want her on our TV right now. She's gorgeous.
Yeah.
She's, fit. She has a good personality. She can talk, like all of those things. I'm not saying she can go up there and cut a promo like The Rock, but what I'm saying is some people aren't good on camera or don't speak naturally, or they don't have the charisma. She has, again, it's another person that ticks all the boxes. Pretty girl who's athletic, works her ass off, and is pretty much ready for prime time. Put her out there, see what she can do. And it's just like, I don't know. They got that's the problem. They got 200 women on the roster, and it's like, yeah, what are we going to do with them?
Right.
It's just frustrating because, like, you see, I mean, this is the whole thing. Keith Lee. Why are we even talking about Keith Lee? It still bugs me that he's on this list of like.
Well, we should be talking about Keith Lee, but we shouldn't be having this conversation because it's ridiculous. I mean, it's just listen. I think in my heart, I have to think that it's going to work itself out in the end. He's gonna be a star. I mean, it's just a matter of when.
In his future,
100%.
Otherwise, he's gonna go and take that FTW championship from Brian Cage, and I would love to see that. Keith Lee versus Brian Cage.
He can put on some bangers in AEW.
Let's do it. Will Hobbs against Keith Lee. They'd burn the building down. Like those two big guys, they just run at each other and there'd be an explosion. But that's my problem. Is I have people I've known in my life that work for WWE, and I'm happy for them that they're making money, but I'm just really disappointed in how they're Medulla's comment. I'm just really disappointed in how they're being treated. Like Cedric's finally getting treated a little bit better. Dijak really isn't. He was treated like a big deal, and now he's part of Retribution, so they kind of fucked him. And then like Keith Lee, who I don't know him well, but I worked a few shows with him, and I saw how he carried himself backstage and how he interacted with people. I'm like, this guy just has everything. He ticks all the everything that you could ask for. A polite, nice, big wrestler. Like that's just what you want. As your main event guy. It just boggles my mind that we're not in the age anymore where it has to be somebody that looks like Batista or looks like Triple H. Like the attraction of Keith Lee is his size and what he can do in that ring being that size. Mike Medulla, the Medulla, who is calling the shots in WWE? Honestly, I haven't watched Strowman, Keith Lee, McIntyre main attractions. The storylines are not interesting. I mean, listen, it's a common theme. Keith Lee should be a main attraction, and he's not right now. Strowman, he's hurt. McIntyre's doing his thing. I think his whole feud with AJ is great. I mean, I think the storylines are getting better. They're definitely not what they were, but it's tough. But they're working on it. And he also wanted to know what happened to Baylor. He's back at NXT. He was out with an injury. He's back, and he's going to be defending the title at their next show against probably. It looks like it's going to wind up being. What's his face? Kyle O'Reilly and Damian Priest? Or no?
It's going to be either O'Reilly or Dunn, and then they're moving him on to Karrion Kross.
No, I think Kross is gonna be the one to get the shot because he technically had it before. But I don't know. But Medulla, thank you for checking in, man. Huh?
But they're going to do Kross, Damian Priest first.
Yeah, like it seems like they've set up a few challengers.
Unless they're just going to do like a fatal four-way.
They announced that the winner of not Roderick Strong, Kyle O'Reilly versus Pete Dunne is going to get the shot at Balor at New Year's Evil.
Okay.
So then I'm thinking like Cross is going to be obviously the next like guy.
Yeah, I think that's you could have.
But they
you could have
developed
either
the
of those
story
guys.
for Cross versus Damian Priest that could be pretty good.
Yeah, we'll see. So
Well, but it's kind of up in the air. We don't really know if Keith Lee's actually going back to the NXT show or he's just going back to the NXT Performance Center just to work on some of his in-ring talents.
I mean, because let's be honest, if he was going back to the actual show, that could put a whole cog in the whole,
that gums it up.
Who knows?
So speaking of all that, I believe Finn Balor asked to go back to NXT, and they said yes. So for those of you who didn't see Medulla's comment, they asked about what are they doing with Balor. So it is a demotion, but for him, it's better because they booked him like shit on SmackDown and Raw, and they know how to book him in NXT.
They're also trying to set the visual that it's not technically a demotion because they're trying to validate NXT as another brand.
And but the other weird thing is, since we're talking about people being sent up and down, did you, while you were laid up there, Steve, did you hear the rumor that Aleister Black requested to be sent back to NXT and they said no?
I did. And the only reason why I could think of that they would deny it is punishment for Vega.
That's the only, because what are they doing with him on? I don't even know what show he's on. SmackDown?
I think he's on SmackDown, but they haven't really done much. They changed his gimmick around, and then he started losing every match, and
it didn't make any sense. He turned heel because Seth Rollins, who's a heel, poked his eye out with the steps. And then when Kevin Owens interviewed Aleister Black about it, Aleister Black turned heel by hitting Kevin Owens. Instead of... And he never once went back to get revenge on Seth Rollins. He didn't give
see, that's the horrible storytelling that we're talking about that turned Medulla off to not want to watch the program. And you can't blame him.
Yes, I know he's Dutch and he's got a little bit of an accent, but that's not a bad thing.
I honestly barely hear it.
That's the thing. I don't know if I don't know if they didn't, because they always have a thing about accents. If somebody's got a weird accent, they try and...
I mean, I was expecting him to sound like Goldmember, and he doesn't.
No, he sounds fine. And how about this? Just don't have him talk. He comes out in a fucking coffin. Like, he doesn't need to talk. We get it. He's got tattoos. Comes out with a coffin, tarot cards, all the shit. Like, we get it. We understand the guy. He's a spooky guy. We don't need the spooky guy to go, I'm a spooky guy. We just wrestle as a spooky guy. But even when he talks, it's a good promo. Knock on my door. I'm waiting. Good. And he asked people to knock on his door for a fucking year, and nothing ever came of it. What did he wrestle Braun Strowman, and then in like a double DQ, and that was it?
Yeah, he had like something with Murphy and then Braun for like a cup of coffee.
But nothing. And then now if I'm remembering correctly, he used to have trunks with some kind of design on them. Now he doesn't have, like, he's got very plain gear, just like Tucker Knight went from having a look as part of Heavy Machinery to just being jobber looking Tucker Knight.
They take everything special about someone and take it away from them.
Mm-hmm. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating because there are, like, we considering people are going to listen to the podcast, oh, we're shitting on them. And yes, we are, but it's because there are positive things. We mentioned the Drew AJ. Drew McIntyre and AJ Styles always going to put on a good match. Roman Reigns,
and the story's been great.
Right. The Fiend is on Raw. Roman Reigns and Sasha Banks are on SmackDown. I like this thing with Gable and Otis, and Gable's trying to train Otis to be like a more serious wrestler. And there's like comedy bits, like there's shit going on. But sometimes on Raw, it's a 3-hour show, and aside from a Fiend segment and maybe
which by the way was great this week.
But what I'm saying is, those in a 3-hour show, you're looking at like half an hour of stuff that you like. So that's something they got to fix. You want to go over the Fiend thing? Explain that to the fine folks. Who,
Well, we got Bray Wyatt decided to bring the Firefly Funhouse to Raw. So the puppets were ringside, and Bray was just being great. I mean, he's just phenomenal in his. He was telling horrible jokes, but he's being Bray, and he's just funny. So it was fun. Then Orton shows up on the screen, cuts a real great promo, and says, "Let's play a game. You like to play games. Let's play hide and seek." So now throughout the night, they're playing. Bray's trying to find Randy. Obviously, he finds him, but there's just his old chair rocking. So he sits down in the chair. Orton comes from behind. They wind up fighting. Then Orton gets Bray into a box and closes the box, pours gasoline, lights it on fire, and the Fiend comes out and gives the claw. And that's how that whole deal ended throughout the night. But it was great because it was broken up throughout all the hours.
That's how the Fiend. Honestly, that's what they're doing with the Fiend stuff. They leave.
Yes.
They put in a segment every couple minutes so you don't turn it off.
It's like you remember how effortlessly Mick Foley could turn from one character to the other. Bray is like that.
Yeah. I have a question.
No Alexa Bliss again 2 weeks in a row, but apparently she's filming a reboot of Punky Brewster or some shit.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah. So anyway.
But the segments. Randy Orton, the rocking chair, come find me. I feel like didn't they do a come find me Bray Wyatt Randy Orton thing a couple years ago?
Yeah, when they did the whole thing where Orton ultimately burnt the house down, I think it was a part of that. But they did it well enough this time where you didn't give a shit. I mean, it was
I was trying to think. I'm like, this sounds familiar. And then when
that's what I like about it. I love
out of the thing. Yeah,
I love the continuity of it. Like going back to that, remembering that.
But no,
those are some of the best stories though, because half of it's written already. You know what I mean? And if it was successful, then as long as you got the thing is that Bray Wyatt can turn anything, even if it's shitty, you're still going to be interested because the way he does his character is just, it doesn't get better than him when it comes to storytelling in a character. In my opinion, I'm not saying he's the best wrestler, but he's definitely one of the best characters in the business. And when you talk about somebody being one of the best characters, it's solely because of the person that's being that character. Nobody else could have been Undertaker.
Right.
Nobody else could have ever been the Undertaker. Ever. There will never ever be another Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, that kind of thing. And the same goes here.
Oh, for sure.
Real quick, I want to jump to War Games just briefly.
Yes.
I
insane.
Okay. I have to say the women fucking killed it like always. And it was just awesome. And the whole show was fine. Both War Games were good. I'm not a McAfee fan. I never will be. I just don't get it. I think he's annoying as fuck. It makes me tune out. So
you got to appreciate what he's been able to do, though. You can't take that away from him.
I don't give a shit what he does in the ring. It doesn't matter at the end of the day.
It's impressive. It's impressive in the fact that this is not something that he comes from, and some of the shit he's been able to pull off. It shows you that he's working at it.
Definitely, but then it also makes some of the roster look like shit too.
No,
I think McAfee. Pat McAfee should light a fire under every single person in NXT.
Yeah,
because of
for sure.
Because he's coming out here and he's putting on these I mean, as a former NFL player who's got money in the bank, who owns a media company and runs it and does his own podcast. They've got like a subscription service. He does a daily podcast. They do daily YouTube videos, all kinds of shit. He's got a whole production studio. He's got money. He doesn't need to do this. He does it because he loves it. And he goes out there and takes these big, stupid fucking bumps that he has no business taking.
True.
But you just, you can't just be middle of the road. I wear black trunks and I'm a serious wrestler NXT guy like fucking every other wrestler on the NXT. Like, it's not every wrestler. It's every other wrestler is plain trunks, probably a beard or a goatee, and their gimmick is that they're a really serious wrestler. And it's like, we get it. We got a fucking 1,000 of you guys.
Like someone like Timothy Thatcher, who's just boring.
I don't give a single fuck about Timothy Thatcher. I don't. I wish I could. The guy's making his money. He's doing his thing. I don't get it. They took a guy who's not good at talking, and they gave him a talk show segment called Thatch's Thatch Can. Like, why don't you just go out there and execute him in the fucking ring? He can't talk. He's not that kind of
I think that'd be more entertaining.
I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, they basically left the guy out there to die on TV, so why not just fucking shoot him in the middle of the ring? You might as well.
Yeah.
Fuck. Like, it's just frustrating to watch. Like, it's like the guy is a very good technical wrestler. He wears the high socks. He's even though he's from the US, he wrestles that British catch wrestling style. I get it. But also, you got to give me something. Nobody gives a
you got to have some substance to you.
It's not all just about wrestling, the technical skill of wrestling. It's part of it. But it's
you
not
look at someone like Adam Cole, who's incredible in the ring, but he's also got charisma to boot, you know?
He's like, you know, when he wants you to like him, he's likable. When he wants you to hate him, he gets people to boo.
But for me, once again, the women's division in NXT is my favorite part of NXT. Usually, you know?
And see, that's because of this whole, you know, and it's not the Undisputed Era's problem. It's not, they didn't cause it. The problem is with the men's division, because WWE has been playing this will they, won't they game with the Undisputed Era.
Oh, yeah, for like a year.
At least. So they've been doing this. It harms, like you said, if Keith Lee came back down from Raw to NXT, it would fuck up the main event scene of NXT. Adam Cole and the Undisputed Era being there fucks up the main event because unless they're going to give Kyle O'Reilly a run with the belt, they've done everything there is to do. Cole won the world title and the North American title. The other guys had the tag titles. They were the hottest faction. We get it. Then you go and you put people over, you build up the next group, and you move on. That's always the way it's been in wrestling. That's why the territories work. How can I miss you if you don't go away? You spend some time in Georgia, then you go back to Texas. By the time you go back to Georgia, they miss you. You know, it's one of the... The Undisputed Era are so good and so relied on for so many main events. I don't want to say they're getting overexposed, but they're being used so much. It's not like a special treat to see the Undisputed Era wrestling. Oh, we see them wrestle together all the fucking time. It's like,
I think it's time they get called up, quite honestly.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of call-ups, having to do with factions. If you remember, 2 weeks ago when we had our last episode, me and Amanda and the rest, you know, but I think it was me and Amanda mostly, we were talking about how to separate Big E from the New Day.
It's happening already.
Right. The music has to change.
Thanks to Paul
gear
Heyman.
has to change. They did that. We missed a week where we could have talked about it. They started the transition from Big E as part of the New Day to Big E single superstar. It's on the road. It's on the way.
Well, and I'll tell you right now, a big part of that was Paul Heyman. That interview, if you haven't seen it, go on YouTube. It's on the what is it? The thing with Braxton and Paul Heyman. What do they call it?
Well, like Talking Smack or whatever?
Yeah,
Talking Smack. And Paul Heyman, it was a great promo between the two of them. And that's what really started this whole...
We're getting serious Big E, future main eventer Big E.
And he doesn't... Listen, it's not that he can't dance or gyrate his hips or do, you know, whatever he wants to do. But when it comes to nut-cutting time, just have that killer instinct. Be the serious wrestler. You can go back and joke like The Rock. Laughed and joked and cut promos and told jokes in his promos. He was a funny guy. But when it came to wrestling the match, he was deadly fucking serious to wrestle that match. So you can do the same thing with Big E. And my theory is, and this is a big one, my theory is if WWE can't get The Rock to commit to the WrestleMania match with Reigns, your WrestleMania match for SmackDown is going to be Big E, Roman Reigns. And they're already starting with Big E being on Talking Smack. That was the seed that they planted. I don't know if it's going to be just in case or if it's going to be this is the plan now.
Now, hold on.
It almost seems like somebody internally is like, hey, guys, I don't think we're going to get The Rock. Figure out what we're going to do for WrestleMania. And they're like, you know what? We got this guy Big E on deck. We change his music. Wale's a big wrestling fan. The new music is by Wale. He's got new gear that's not New Day. Like, it doesn't match the pattern that the New Day is wearing on Raw. And I think we're in line for WrestleMania main event Big E this year. Man.
So now let me ask you a question then. Is that you now already saying that Big E is your pick to win the 2020 Royal Rumble? Or 21, I should say.
Could be, or he wins the the Elimination Chamber or a 6-pack challenge or a Beat the Clock or something to get, because you could have somebody. I don't know who's going to challenge Drew. You know what I mean? So the easiest way to get somebody to challenge Drew, because Reigns being a heel, you can just kind of be like, I'm the underdog and I'm going to beat you because you're the bad heel and we're going to take back control of SmackDown, whatever the fuck. You can put a babyface in that, but like Drew, the way to introduce his opponent would probably be the Rumble. I mean, usually that's what it is. One is the Rumble, one's the Elimination Chamber, or something the other way around, where like they figure out a contender. I'm not going to put all my money on Big E, but I for right now, I'm leaning towards Big E being Rumble, potentially Rumble, and if not Rumble, then WrestleMania.
Well, I have to tell you that we, if you go back into the archives of our show, we have had this conversation where Big E's name already has come up to win the Royal Rumble, and I am starting to lean that that's a very good possibility, and I think it's well deserving. I think, I wish, I love it. I love Big E. I've always been a fan, so I hope they give him his time.
Absolutely, he deserves time to shine. And the only other reason I mention this idea is a lot of things kind of happen at once, because I saw the interview with Heyman and Big E, and then like a week later I saw something where there was an article where a journalist interviewed Arn Anderson, and Arn said, with coronavirus and all these health concerns, there's no crowd, this, that, and the other thing, I don't believe The Rock would agree to wrestle Roman Reigns under these modern circumstances, and that it will have to clear up before The Rock would challenge Roman Reigns.
I could see that. Rock wants to be in front of a crowd. He doesn't want to be in front of a bunch of TV screens. I get it,
But Rock tweeted that article out and said, a lot of good insight here by Arn Anderson.
Oh, he did.
He tweeted the article. So I think The Rock is trying to tell these guys, like, subliminally hint to everybody, hey, I don't think I'm going to do this WrestleMania thing this year. He's like, I don't think it's off the table. I don't think it's ever off the table that The Rock will come back to wrestle a match until he's fucking dead.
There's no reason why it can't happen for 2022.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Hey, listen, we have about 5 minutes or so left. We're getting to the top of the hour. TLC this Sunday.
You coming up? It's Sunday?
Right? It's this Sunday, I believe.
Holy shit, are you serious?
Yes, sir.
20th. I'll be goddamned.
So we have the Fiend versus Orton. I'm going with the Fiend on this one. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Fiend.
Yeah, me too.
We're gonna have McIntyre versus AJ Styles. I think McIntyre keeps the belt,
but with a great match.
Here's the problem. They've now verbalized through the Miz saying, "Oh, the Miz will go, well, if Drew wins the match, I'll just cash in my Money in the Bank." Which, you know what that means? He's not going to cash in his Money in the Bank.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening at the pay-per-view.
No. They've like the whole Money in the Bank this year was. They might as well have not fucking done it. They gave it to Otis, and then Miz took it from Otis, and now Miz is doing like. Drew is literally taking the Money in the Bank briefcase and throwing it around like it's nothing, like it's meaningless to him. This briefcase does not. The briefcase being held by the Miz doesn't concern Drew McIntyre at all. So fuck it. What's next?
We got Roman Reigns versus
Kevin Owens.
Yep.
Kevin Owens for the title. I think Roman obviously is keeping the belt.
But listen, it's the same story for the last 4 years or 6 years or whatever it is. It's going to be the story for the next 6 years.
Right.
Every pay-per-view, we're just going, oh, Roman Reigns wins. Move on.
Well, I mean, listen, everything I've heard since he acquired the title back was that this was going to be a substantial run. I mean, in my opinion, I don't think he drops until Mania at the earliest.
Yeah,
I think he's going into Mania as champion. So
definitely.
I'm going Reigns all the way. What other matches are there?
Nia Jackson, Shayna Baszler against Asuka, and Lana got taken out of the match, so it's a mystery partner.
It's either Mandy Rose or Dana Brooke. I'm going to go with Mandy Rose since she showed up on Raw. Ooh.
This is the rumor that's going around currently.
Honestly, I would be so down for that.
I don't know how
Whoa,
I feel.
now that I would be okay with that. Did Eric just say Love and Charlotte in the same sentence?
I know. What the hell happened there?
Because you know why? Because it's a different fucking championship. And
All right, I'll give you that.
I would love to see her as a tag team champion. I think that's something that should happen.
And it would be interesting seeing her and Asuka together with their history. But all right, I can get on board with that.
As the women's champion, yeah.
I can get on board with that.
That's just something that's like, well, Charlotte hasn't been around for a while, and there's like rumblings like, oh, what if it's Charlotte?
Yeah, because I feel like it would go down like a fart in church if it was Dana Brooke or Mandy Rose.
Well, it can't because Dana Brooke just got attacked too, right? Didn't they? They attacked Lana after one match, and they attacked Dana after the match with Natty.
I was just getting to the point where I just assumed Charlotte wasn't going to return into the Rumble at this point.
Right.
But
I'm the same way. But
I've heard Rhea Ripley as a possible partner too.
Who?
Rhea Ripley.
Rhea Ripley? Oh, okay.
Well, I'm not opposed to that either.
Something to do. I feel bad. She really
she got screwed.
She was supposed to win. The day of the show, they changed it. Why the fuck do they do this shit constantly? The Undertaker's streak was decided the day of the show.
Yeah.
The day of the show! It was around for 21 years. The day of the fucking show, you change your mind?
What else we got?
Years. But whatever. All right.
What else we got?
Same thing.
I think they made.
Oh, Sasha's gonna face Carmella.
Oh,
Sasha's gonna win,
and Sasha's retaining.
Yeah.
Although I love what Carmella's been doing, her mic work got better. Her match with Sasha, I thought she did pretty well considering like Carmella's not been one of the best. She's definitely been working on it.
I don't care. So, I don't care about Carmella anymore.
The thing that stinks is that they've built her up like as this.
And she's gonna lose already.
Right, and she's gonna lose her big match. Like again, this is the same. It's the Keith Lee problem. You bring somebody in, you put them in the main event, you don't know what to do with them, so they fucking lose, and now they're a loser. And I'm not saying Keith Lee's a loser because he does win matches, but like last night, he fucking lost. He's a loser. If Carmella loses this, you just spent all this time building.
There goes her momentum, right?
Right. Yes, you just killed it dead again. And it's not for nothing because Sasha obviously needs to keep the title and keep the momentum going for her because this is her first real title run.
Right. And it's going well. So they're not going to shorten it now.
Who do we picture as Sasha's opponent for Mania?
It's too early.
Is that too far away?
How about this? Bianca Belair?
I could see it being Bayley.
Yeah, Bianca.
I was gonna say Bayley. That's too predictable. I'm going with Bianca Belair.
I could see Bianca Belair winning the Women's Royal Rumble this year.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it would be, and I think Sasha versus Bianca is a marketable match.
Oh, 100%.
I know Bianca's not a big name, but that's the whole point. Like, she's starting to get big. That's why you put Hogan with Warrior. And I'm not saying that this is a lower scale version of that.
I get the comparison though.
You put Sasha with Bianca and her. If they did it this way, where Bianca beats Sasha at WrestleMania, she's made. For the rest of her life, she's made. She beat Sasha Banks at WrestleMania. Boom. She can just go on from there. So that's my early pick to win the Women's Royal Rumble. Is
and I think they might do something. I think what is it like Cedric and Shelton against the New Day, where they finally win the tag titles.
For the tag titles. I don't care, so I'm going to say the New Day.
I don't care either, but I actually think that it's going to go to the Hurt Business.
You know, I was almost going to say the Hurt Business because of that skit where they dumped the milk on the guy holding the bro nuts.
Kofi called it the butthurt business.
Yes,
Oh, and I think they're going to wind up adding Riddle versus Lashley for the title, and I think Riddle's going to win.
Bro, we didn't even get a chance to talk about how weird. Like they have
Next week, we definitely have to focus a little on Riddle because he's been fucking gold. Everything about him.
It's so strange to me that they did.
He's just stoned all the time.
Right,
It's fucking great.
It's just this guy's just stoned all the time,
and now he's got bro nuts. I mean,
bro nuts and pronouns and all that.
And the bro boys or with Jeff, it's fucking
The Hardy Bros.
Hardy Bros. Thank you. But we have reached the top of the hour, so we will have to kick off next week with a little riddle.
Yeah, please somebody remind us if you're listening. We'll talk about Riddle.
He's basically Spicoli from Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
100%.
Yeah.
Great comparison.
He
should order a pizza.
Next Tuesday is the 22nd of December.
Wow.
And we talked about this before earlier in the week. We want to let you folks know that next week is going to be our War Report Festivus episode. We are going to air our wrestling grievances for the year 2020. And if you, as a listener, have one, go ahead and go on social media at Tag Me a Date, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Periscope, whatever the fuck. On twitch.tv, it's twitch.tv/War Report. On the audio version of the podcast, it's Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Apple, and Google Play podcasts. We stream on YouTube as well, at Tag Me a Date. Most of our stuff is at Tag Me a Date. No spaces, Tag Me a Date. But like I said, if you have a wrestling grievance, send it to one of our social medias. You can, I don't know, if you want to use the hashtag Wrestling Festivus, go for it. But just do at Tag Me a Date. Let us know what your gripes and your complaints
Or do it live during the show on Facebook. Just add
Yeah,
your comment. It'll come up on the screen, and we can do it then too.
We'll do. That's even a better idea. During the show.
And also, incidentally, it will be our 6th anniversary of our maiden show
our
back
maiden
in
voyage.
The end of 2014.
It was a 3-hour tour, and here we are 6 years later. So it'll be a celebration, Festivus anniversary show.
The rest of it.
We will read. Yes, we'll read your airing of grievances on the show next week for Festivus. Again, we broadcast Tuesday evenings, 7 p.m. on Eastern Time. If you're somewhere else that's not the East Coast of the United States, adjust your clocks as you need to. And we stream live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And again, you look for Tag Me a Date, you look for the War Report, you'll find us. It's really, we're not hard to find. If you enjoy talking wrestling and listening wrestling, give us a look. Especially comment next week with your airing of grievances. Let your friends know if you're enjoying the show. Share it with them. We want more listeners. We want more viewers because we love talking wrestling. The best way for us to do that is if other people engage in the conversation with us. That's our fun. When we see somebody like Medulla come through and comment, that helps us spur our conversation even further along. So share it with your friends. Get the word out there. Get your audio version on your podcast network of choice. Or just watch it live Tuesday evenings, 7 p.m. Eastern Time as we live stream. Thank you so much for watching another edition of the War Report. We'll be back next week. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.